This is the Reach Tech Guide to the use of timers and level indicators in Qt Creator. This is my example program that uses both. Start with an empty project from Reach's sample QML applications. Then navigate to the Design tab. Add an image button to the center of the page. This will be your load button. Now add a rectangle in the center. This will be your loading screen. And finally, you need a horizontal level indicator. Make sure that the loading text and the horizontal level indicator are children of the loading screen rectangle. Now that you have all the components in place, go back to the Edit tab. To help with referencing, it's good to change the IDs of the components to something recognizable. Now, the loading screen needs two states so that you can control its visibility during the program. You should also add property changes to reset the value of the loading bar when the loading screen becomes visible. You also need to tell the loading screen to start invisible by default. Do this by setting its state to off. Now you'll need timers. Timers are default QML components that count for a certain interval of time and then trigger. You can control the interval, whether or not they repeat, what happens when they're triggered, and more. This first timer I will use to create a delay function. This will control how long the loading screen is visible for. The state change function, when called, toggles the loading screen state on and off. The end timer function checks to see if the timer is still running, and if it isn't, it calls state change. Finally, whenever the timer starts or stops running, end timer will be called. All of this simply makes the loading screen switch off when the timer runs out. Now you need to write the delay function. This sets the interval of the timer to the value you give the delay function. This stops the timer from repeating. And this starts the timer when the delay function is called. Now you need a second timer to fill the load bar bit by bit. The interval needs to be very short, as it will increase the load bar by a little bit each time it triggers. I'm putting it in for 250 milliseconds. This function checks if the loading screen is visible, and if it is, starts filling the load bar. And this calls the loading function every time the timer is triggered. Now you need to edit the loading bar so it fills up the whole way in the given time. I'm setting the maximum value to 40 because I'm going to set the delay to 10,000 milliseconds and the interval of the ticker is 250 milliseconds. 10,000 divided by 250 is 40. Now all you need to do is configure the load button to open the loading screen when pressed and start the delay. You're going to need to use the state change function here as well. You can copy and paste it from the load timer. The load function will call state change and delay for 10 seconds. Finally, when the button is pressed, the load function will be called.